Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very unique and special project today, the tribute to healthcare workers in verse. And this is specially hosted by the Poetry Festival Singapore. And we are very honored indeed to have this here at the LaSalle College of Arts. And at the same time, we give a big thank you to the National Arts Council for making this project very much possible. We also would like to acknowledge our Singapore poets who has contributed vastly to the success which we presume and assume you will like this series because we also have our migrant workers who have so much to share and our healthcare professionals. And ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, let me introduce myself. I'm a foreign artist, but I live in Singapore for almost 30 years of my life. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer. I used to run the radio station in programming, and I'm also a broadcast personality and lecturer in many universities. And having said that about myself, I think we would like to go ahead with the program, and now we would like to begin with introducing our first poet for today. Anne Lee Tzu Peng. She's internationally published. She has 7 personal collections of poetry, a book of short reflections on faith and writing. Soul's Festival is also a reissue of her first 4 collections, known for its clarity and understated humor. Her work has won numerous awards, including the Singapore Cultural Medallion, the Southeast Asia Wright Award, the Gabriela Mistral Award from Chile, and the Mont Blanc CFA Literary Award. And Miss Anne Lee has mentored many of her Singapore's younger poets.
Hello, everyone. I'm honored and delighted to be asked to contribute poems to this event. We have all gone through different kinds of deprivation and loss these many months. And none know this suffering more than our healthcare workers and frontliners. They have toiled long hours in the midst of the sick, in the most unimaginable discomfort of body and mind, trying to keep the sick alive at risk of their own lives. To honor these workers, my 2 poems reflect on the stark reality of our stricken world. They are not overtly poems of praise or tribute. I think it is important that we confront unpleasant realities head on and not hide the truth. For often the truth will set us free. These 2 poems are complementary pieces, but also standalone poems. I have called them Pause and Play. Pause. 9 months and more of compulsory confinement begin to feel like gestation without fruition. Time moves and changes, yet the clocks seem to have stopped, their hands hiding their faces in an embarrassment of delay. What can they tell us of this great pause in our life? In a moment, this bloated world imploded and shut down, its plans deflated. Cities, streets are emptied. All have gone in hiding. Our living kept out of sight by decree, our agonies, our confidence devolving, and by necessity undeclared. Everyone's suffering owned, hardly to be shared. Hearts are haltingly abnormally, spirits flickering, even as we imagine, without voice or body to grieve, the dead queuing in numbers faster than the earth has space to house them. Love's last words, hastily folded in prayers cast upon the wind from distances. Does anyone here do the dead? It is hardly bearable that in a few hundred days, thousands of souls blessed in life and love struggled to unmute the clogging air, gasping in unwilling disbelief, snuffed out by despair. Too many born dishonored to the grave. Love is locked out, locked down, refused entry to places of caring designed to heal and save. Earth, our home, was never more strange, and our world inhospitable. For many, pandemic transits to pandemonium, tortured behind closed doors. Now we must stop to think, force ourselves to sink into our deep unknowing, holding our breath like the dying. But we are the living, for whom everyone is untouchable, from whom everyone stays out of reach, unnaturally alone. What are we waiting for? A death or an awakening? Each at our own reckoning, restoring life or abandoning. The second poem is called Play. Now we can see ourselves, magnifying that pinpoint in the dark. Look, now the skies are blue and clear, reflecting on the ocean's upturned face. Stark truths from the deep are coming up for air. Breathe, listen. Now we can hear the birds. Their waking songs return that we were deaf to. Smog's chokehold released, fluorescences revive. Jasmine, tambusu, lily, gardenia, unclog our senses for life-giving air. Within the bad dream that became reality, such consolations thrive. Earth is looking up after being beaten down. Abused a million ways, she still tolerates, replenishing our days. Now we can see ourselves. The ungrateful, ignorant, indifferent, wasteful tribe, preferring darkness to growing in the light. We worshipped gods we made and let them rule. The breath that made Adam stand up and walk and talk and name his world is a forgotten memory. Those of us who still have breath cannot give respiration, nor reparation for what the enemy has stolen. There remains one source, and we wrestle with how to draw on it, to summon mercy and generosity for an unbelieving people. Our heads wrapped in protection, useless, as are all the paraphernalia, semblances of shrouds and winding sheets that speak prophetically of the end to come. Every tube and gadget replacing the body's thoroughfare, living by machinery, is mockery. One hope remains, that those drowning and those whose mission is to defy death are the closest they will ever be. Hands and feet, eyes, voices forced together, recognize no distinction. Return images of a life that came once from the same source, without division or strife. In those phantasmagoric scenes, hope with healing comes, if at all, with our reclaiming how to see, to hear, and believe. Beyond unimaginable reality, human spirits uniting to survive.
Our next poet is Amy Martin. Amy is from Indonesia, East Java, working in Singapore since 2010. Currently a volunteer at Migrant Writer of Singapore and IDHA non-profit organization. Amy loves writing and taking pictures to help deal with sadness of being far from her loved ones. Amy loves baking and cooking too.
Hello everyone, I am Amy from Indonesia, East Java. Thank you so much for Migrant Writer of Singapore. Because of them, I can stand be here as a poet. And Miss Silva as a organizer Putri Festival of Singapore. I will share my two pieces of my poem. This is my first piece. Valuable. Do you know what is cheapest? Healthy, the answer, but always ignore it. Healthy, it will be very expensive if you have fallen ill. Treasure, time, no matter how much is insignificant. Body, life is useless without being healthy. Then remember, before your breath stops, make sure your breath is not breath of the pain. Pleasure need not give up health. This is my second piece about my lodging. Because of this COVID, very long time is not be done. I cannot going home visit of my family. Lodging. I am who is silent in the silence of the wind. Mute, staring at the day getting dreamer. Until orange embraces the night. And where that longing come? Embroidering under the wind of lodging for waiting. Stunned, uncertain bit of the day. The sorrow and loneliness that always loom over. Who know what the cause this wound? Maze. This lodging is the cause of my wound. Season passed. Time has not passed. Circumstances have not changed. Heart has frozen. my lodging is neglected, while my soul still colliding with uncertain time. Thank you, everyone.
Our next poet is Zhong Haitao. Zhong Haitao is from Shanxi province in China and currently he works as an HP technician in Singapore. Writing poems is his hobby. He loves Chinese classical literature and is very interested in poems, though he has not read a lot of them. He started to write poems from high school. He has tried to write them on various themes and using different forms. In 2015, he took part in the Migrants Poetry Competition in Singapore and he participated in a documentary on 5 foreign worker poets shot by Uptake Media and was interviewed by the South China Morning Post in Singapore in the same year.
Good morning, everyone. I come from China, Shanxi province. I'm glad to see you here, share my point with yours. This is my poem. 月夜随响，风微微地吹着，轻拂着小丘上的蒲公英。不远的小河在月光下，波光粼粼的蜿蜒地流向大海。一轮皎洁明月静静地挂在天上，照亮着生机盎然的万物。思念是一颗蒲公英的种子，有风就能飞到故乡。思念是一条蜿蜒流长的河，永远朝着海的方向。思念是夜空中一轮圆月，可以照亮有家的地方。我这个漂泊的游子啊，愿化作一颗蒲公英，愿化作一条河，愿化作天上的一轮月，将我的思念变成一粒种、一滴水、一束光，投到故土的怀抱，深深地将我的爱播撒。This is English version. Beginning of autumn. Almost imperceptibly, the wind is blowing, stroking the daylight on the hill. Not too far away, under the moonlight, the river reposes, glitters snacking into the sea, and the poor round hairs hushed in the sky, illuminating living, breathing life of living things. Longing is the daylight seed, with a breeze of wind you can fly to in your hometown. Longing is a meandering river, always finding its way towards the sea. Longing is a full moon in the night sky, illuminating every place where there is a home. And I, the driving wanderer, would spur us into a daylight, would trickle in a river, would move into the moon, and let my longing find form in a seed, a droplet, a beam, and fall into the arms of my homeland, and sow and flow and shine, my deepening loves. Thank you, everyone.
Our next poet was born on the 5th of February 1958, Kamaria Binti Buang. She dedicated most of her time as a full-time housewife by day and as sewing instructor for the People's Association or PA at various residence center and community centers. She's an avid poetry writer primarily in the Malay language. Throughout her years, she's been writing poetry as a hobby, but recently Kamaria began taking her writing seriously. Her first published poetry was in 2006 and by Singapore's Malay newspaper Berita Minggu. To date, more than 100 of her poetry pieces have been published by Berita Minggu. In 2009, Anugerah Persuratan, Kamaria was awarded in the poetry category with her piece titled Anak Tertangga Kelantan Lana, which was fitted with most Malay A-level literature textbook Bergitulah Kata-Kata. Sandalku Milikmu, the first book published by TBM in 2015, titled Tanah di Sini Aku Bersemadi, Poetry. She became a member of ASAS 50, a community group made up of Malay language writers.
Salam sejahtera. Nama saya Kamaria. Hari ini saya akan membaca sebuah puisi berjudul Pengorbanan di Sanjung Watan. Puisi ini menceritakan tentang bakti kepada masyarakat, keberanian, pengorbanan mereka yang menghadapi pesakit COVID. Di sebalik pelitup mewarnai wajah, mereka bersemangat wajah. Berkorban di barisan hadapan, membenam COVID, membenam. Tiada peduli pada masa. Tiada peduli pada rintangan yang ada. Merawati duka, menyapa. Pagar COVID dirempuh bersama. Titisan keringat bagaikan hujan menderas. Membasahi tubuh, cemas dan lemas. Berjaya selamat atau gagal mendarat. Harus gelombang semakin menyekat. Mohon kudrat, moga diberkat. Mendung COVID yang berlandung dingin, meleleh dalam debu di bawah angin, menyuntik di sisi kehidupan, rebah, masyghul, jiwa dan raga. Pada mereka yang alpa segalanya, kau berjuang di barisan hadapan, memagar kewarasan setiap insan. Tabikku pada mereka budiman. Kini selamanya dijunjung watan. Terima kasih.
Our next poet is Junida Baharawi, and she works as a social worker, loves to write Malay poetry and short stories. Some of her works have been published in the Malay newspaper, Berita Harian, as well as anthologies organized by Asas 50 and Unggun Creative. She has received a merit prize for a Malay short story entitled Lahad, or Graveyard, for Mencari Kristal competition organized by Berita Harian in 2019.
Thank you, Poetry Festival Singapore. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Nama saya Junida Baharawi. Sajak saya pada hari ini ialah Satria Negara. Sajak ini ialah penghargaan terhadap barisan hadapan di atas pengorbanan mereka yang luar biasa. Cumalah. Tika hati-hati dicengkam, keresahan dan ketakutan. Engkau tetap marah, bersenjata semangat wajah, mendepani musuh tersembunyi, mempertaruh nyawa sendiri. Saban hari terbenam dalam kesibukan dan kelelahan, menjaga, merawat, mendampingi. Kadang kesepian melanda diri, terpisah dari keluarga. Engkau juga seorang manusia. Usah biarkan pandangan sinis serta tuhmahan memadam semarak api perjuangan kerana mereka tidak mengerti. Tanpamu, kekalutan berterusan. Kehadiranmu mencetus harapan. Pengorbanan tidak terhingga, masa, tenaga, jiwa raga, bermandi keringat dan air mata, mencabar benteng ketahanan, memastikan keselamatan, bak mentari menerangi kekelaman. Wahai para satria negara, terima kasih kami ucapkan. Jasa-jasamu yang luar biasa kan kami kenang sepanjang zaman. Wahai para pejuang berhati mulia, semoga Tuhan merahmatimu semua. Thank you.
Singapore-born Chow Teck Seng, aka Zhou Dixing, writes poetry primarily in Chinese and has won awards such as the Singapore Literature Prize in 2014 and the Golden Point Award in 2009. Frequently contributing to literary journals, anthologies, and the Chinese press in Singapore and abroad. His poems in English translations are found in And Words, Union, Ethos, Singapore Poems 2015-6, and Poetry at Sangum, and are adapted as short films by the LaSalle students in 2017. He was a former lecturer in the Chinese language literature at the NUS and the NIE. He is currently pursuing a PhD at the Cambridge University.
Hi, good day. I'm Chong Dixing or Chong Dixing. Today I'm going to present to all of you a poem. We are still in the midst of the pandemic, and this poem, entitled Aftermath, Not Yet, is written in the voice of a medical personnel. I will first present to you in the Chinese version. 劫后余生，冠病大流行期间，某医护人员自序。 比天黑还快，比光更短促。心中的触动，竟比官方3、5时的电视新闻报道、手机五花八门的讯息早到若干小时。关于死亡的知识，心理学意义的逃亡，丈量着人与人与神秘病毒时人为时自然的距离在拔河。毕竟入场已过开场的时间。为了比时间更昂贵的独处，为了比生命更昂贵的尊严，我把每天过得像平日，复活也好，清明也好，受难也好，在不闲着的病床边，安静点缀的昏木至黑夜，也并非没有星星，都像一个个被蛰伤会发亮、呼吸着的窗口。读着写满病历的笔记本，淋于潦草字迹的空白处，不是没有我思考的单流。手握徒劳的命运，我们是灾难片主角，亦或配角，戴着口罩收拾残局。某个明天，我们将从电影院回到真实。Now I will read it in the English version. Aftermath, not quite. Words from a medical staff during the coronavirus pandemic. Faster than nightfall, shorter than the bandwidth of light. Its arrival hit my heart a few hours earlier than all the texts, messages, and media updates, and rumors that flooded our mobiles and screens. All were renewed knowledge about death. Forgotten psychological hiccups. The distance between one man from another hides the mysterious virus. A game of tug and war between human and nature. After all, the audience were admitted into the show long past the opening hours. What that's dearer than time is solitude. Solitude of living, solitude of dying alone, and more expensive than life. Dignity, not digging your grave, neither. A patient who left the world with grace. I, attempting to live every day like a normal day, in between daily festivals of life and death. By the side of the occupied beds was emptiness. From a silent evening to dark nights, stars as witnesses were wounds that shine and breathe, like the aftermath of a bee sting incident. Reading my small notebook, penned down with new medical cases, the wide empty spaces between the scribed words now cluttered with my thoughts. Destiny. We were not so sure if we were the protagonists or supporting roles in the disaster movies. We all mask up to clean up the mess. Someday, we will return to reality, feeling so surreal when out from the dark cinema. Thank you.
Our next poet describes herself as a regular Singaporean with eyes and mind about poem. She will do a tribute of Wira Singapura. Her name is Miss Noor Zukharia Binti Hamdan.
Hi everyone, my name is Noor Zuharia Binti Hamdan. My bio may seem too vague as I'm still new to the scene. This piece of mine for today's event is a piece that dictates the support, hopes and sacrifices of our heroes of COVID-19. Titik permulaan jauh nun di sana. Di sini tanggung akibatnya. Kurang sedia terima hakikat merana. Sokongan dihulurkan, amin katanya. Jangan mengeluh rasa geram di hati. Ambil ikhtibar buat generasi nanti. Bukan cerita dongeng buah mulut orang negeri. Dirakam dalam sejarah buat semua kaji. Doktor jururawat barisan hadapan. Masa dan tenaga sedia dikorbankan. Ketepikan segala lelah dan kepenatan. Dengan harapan Singapura selamat dan aman. Buat semua jangan lupakan. Titik hitam jadikan tauladan. Peluang direbut di cabaran kehidupan. Ujian Tuhan hadapi dengan keredaan. Thank you.
Our next poet is Zakir Hussain Khokan. Zakir Hussain Khokan is a prize-winning poet, freelance journalist, writer, editor, photographer, organizer, social entrepreneur, and speaker at a TEDx Singapore and various social platforms. He is the founder of the Migrant Writers of Singapore, One Bag, One Book, and Migrant Worker Photography Festival. He and a migrant and local volunteer team have been raising awareness, promoting diversity, empowering migrant community through literature, reading, but photography, films, blood donation drives, book fair, panel discussion, human library, stage poetry play, art exhibition, publishing books, and other art activities. Zakir is from Bangladesh and works as a construction quality controller.
Hello everyone, I'm Zakir Hussain Khokan. I'm a poet, freelance journalist and community organizer. Today I'm going to share one of my poems with all of you. My poem title is Life, Please Wait. I wrote this poem to give respect all of frontline heroes, respect to everyone. Now I'm going to share my poem. This is a strange time. The world is counting her breath. I am passed to the quarantine with 11 faces. Time stands here still for us immobile. We lost a word to fear. We are mute and some of us cry in the prayer at midnight. Our life is strange like the world. We can count anxiety diffused in each breath. We push the thick aluminum sheets on the window and stare at the ambulance, a restless visitor for our dorm door and roadside. The sunny pours, depression dripping from the eyes of vision, seeking food. I listen to the weeping, souls are crying inside ambulance, afraid for the lucky one touching back life in this endless agony. At such this bad time, whose are standing the in front of us, I scramble poems on the four wall of my shrinking room. They echo my love and gratitude. Life, please wait, see you again. I will read to you the poems on the wall. Thank you, everyone.
Poet is Vicky Chong. Vicky graduated with Master of Arts Creative Writing from Goldsmiths College, University of London. Short story, The Uber driver won third prize in 2018 Nick Joaquin Literary Awards Asia Pacific. She had 3 short stories published in Business Mirror in the Philippines. 2 short stories were also published in anthologies Letter to My Son and A View of Stars. She is very much looking forward to the launch of her first book, Racket and Other Stories by Penguin Random House in 2021.
Hello, thank you for inviting me, Poetry Festival Singapore. This is my tribute to the healthcare workers, especially the nurses who celebrated Nurses' Day yesterday. The title of my poem is Our Guardian Angels. When the world was getting ready for a lockdown, some folks were fighting over toilet rolls, emptying grocery shelves. You were already preparing a battle to fight an invading alien virus. When people were told to stay home, some continued to party and karaoke until they got seriously ill. You were already saving lives with nothing but a stubborn will. While we complain about social distancing and the hassle of putting on masks, we at least had the luxury of Zoom and Deliveroo. But daily you tirelessly don N95 and goggles, on which imprints on your face fatigue lines they drew. Now, as we go about our lives, complaining of the inconveniences of the pandemic, of quarantine and SHN and yet more Zooms, we forget the man once fighting for his life in the ICU, for he could have been us paying the dues. If only we could see the struggle on your face and hear the beeps from the life support. How for him you often went that extra mile. If only we had witnessed how the comatose man opened his eyes one day and saw your smile. When Singapore gets the tributes for the best healthcare and top whatever charts for the COVID fight, we know this happened all because of you. And so we shall continue to clap and cheer in public and also in our heart. This guardian angel who is you. Thank you.
Our next poet, Ayilisha. Ayilisha is the executive producer and co-host of Soli or Solilandanga, a podcast series on Singapore Tamil literature that received support from the National Arts Council from November 2020 to February 2021. She received the NAC Golden Point Awards GPA second prize for Tamil poetry in 2019. Her poem, Seithi Gailin Saram, was featured in the Cordite Poetry Review's 2020 Singapore Poetry Anthology. She holds a bachelor's degree in global studies, policy making South Asia from the National University of Singapore.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். நான் ஆயிலிஷா மந்திரா. இன்று நான் வாசிக்கவிருக்கும் இந்த கவிதை அனைத்து மருத்துவ ஊழியர்களுக்கும் மருத்துவ சேவகர்களுக்கும் சமர்ப்பணம். பெயரெனும் பெயரல் என்பது சங்க இலக்கியத்தில் இடம்பெறும் சொற்கள். அழிவிலும் அழியாதது என்பது அதன் பொருள். இந்த கவிதையின் தலைப்பு பெயரினும் பெயராதது. The poem that I'm about to read, written in my mother tongue, Tamil, more commonly referred to as Tamil, is titled பெயரினும் பெயராதது, which translates as that which doesn't perish even in the face of destruction, written in tribute to our healthcare workers. Now I'll first read it in Tamil before I read its English version. பெயரினும் பெயராதது. நீங்கள் அணியும் கவசங்கள் உங்கள் தோலில் அழிந்துவிட்டு செல்லும் சுவடுகள் நீங்காதவை. நீங்கள் அணியும் கவசங்கள் உங்கள் தோலில் அழிந்துவிட்டு செல்லும் சுவடுகள் நீங்காதவை. களைய மறுக்கும் எத்தனையோ அழுத்தங்களின் கலவை அவை. வரிசையில் காத்து நிற்கும் நேற்றைய தரவக புள்ளிகள் ஒவ்வொன்றின் உயிரையும் காக்கத் துடிக்கும் உங்கள் தார்மீகத்தின் அழுத்தங்கள். உருமாறும் நுண்மையைக் கண்டு தடுமாறா பணியாற்ற ஓய்வின்றி உழைக்கும் உங்கள் இரும்பு இதயத்தின் துடிப்பு தரும் அழுத்தங்கள். உங்கள் மனத்தின் சாளரங்களை தட்டி தட்டி முட்டி மோதி தகர்த்தெரிக்க பாய்ந்து விழும் சமூகம் சுமத்தும் பழிகளின் அழுத்தங்கள். கலிகால தற்காலிகங்களின் தொடர் முற்றுப்புள்ளிகளின் அழுத்தங்கள். தீராத இன்னல்கள் தீட்டிச் செல்லும் கானல் நீரும் கிளம்புகிறது இருளினுள். எங்கோ ஒரு தாதியர் பகலவன் சாயும் வேளையில் விழிக்கிறாள். கதறல்களின் ஓசை நிரம்பிய கனவை காண. எங்கோ ஒரு தாதியர் பகலவன் சாயும் வேளையில் விழிக்கிறாள். கதறல்களின் ஓசை நிரம்பிய கனவை காண. நித்தமும் அவளிடம் மன்றாடும் அழுக்குரல்களின் அழைப்பிற்கு ஆறுதலாக அரவணைக்க முடியாதவள் தன்னை மறந்து சேவை புரிகிறாள். உயிர் போகும் அபாயத்திலும் தன் நெஞ்சை நிமிர்த்தி போர் புரிய முற்படுகிறாள். உயிர் போகும் அபாயத்திலும் தன் நெஞ்சை நிமிர்த்தி போர் புரிய முற்படுகிறாள். இங்கோ ஒரு துப்புரவாளனுக்கு மகனாக பிறந்தவன் தந்தையின் ஈரம் சொட்டும் அழுக்கு துணி பிழிசல் நீரில் ஒளிரும் தன் பிம்பத்தில் நிறைவு காண்கிறான். இங்கோ ஒரு சிறுமியின் சிரிப்பில் இப்போதும் பெருமை மிளர்கிறது. தன் பெயருக்கு முன்னால் அடைமொழியாக உரிமையுடன் அவளது டாக்டர் பட்டத்தை சூட்டிக்கொள்ளும் போது. நீங்களும் பெருமை கொள்ளுங்கள். நீங்களும் நெஞ்சை நிமிர்த்திக் கொள்ளுங்கள். நீங்களும் நிறைவு காண்பீர்கள். சுழற்றி அடிக்கும் இத்துன்னருங்கடல் அலைகள் பட்டும் பெயரினும் பெயராதது உங்கள் பற்று. சுழற்றி அடிக்கும் இத்துன்னருங்கடல் அலைகள் பட்டும் பெயரினும் பெயராதது உங்கள் பற்று. உங்களுக்கு நன்றி. உங்கள் அனைவரையும் வணங்குகிறோம். Unperished. The marks on your skin left by the marks. I'll go again. Unperished. The marks on your skin left by the masks you wear never go away. Marks from a blend of numerous pressures refusing to resign. The pressures from that trolley problem. Trolleys lining up, carrying the dots from yesterday's statistics. Lives waiting for your protection, lives you strive to protect. Pressures from the beat of your heart, of steel, unflinching, undeterred to beat the unknown mutant. Pressures from the arrows of blame and shame banging on the windows of your heart, attempting to pierce through, attempting to shatter. Pressures from the trail of ellipses left behind by Kaligalam, unending strife, a mirage of transience. Somewhere, the sun goes to rest as a nurse wakes to a dream filled with sounds of begging voices, croaking with despair. Voices she can't console with hugs. She forgets herself in service, could lose her life, but she holds her chest high, a warrior charging forth to war. Somewhere, the son of a cleaner watches his father, his wet, dirty rag, drops dripping from it, forming a pool, reflecting his image, brimming with contentment. Somewhere, a little girl is still beaming in pride, bearing before her name a salutation she claims and owns. Doctor. You too beam in pride. You too hold your chest high. You too will find contentment. In this crucible of destiny, a raging ocean tossing our lives, whipping and flinging those who stay and those who are leaving, only one thing stands unperished: your patru, your passion, devotion, dedication. To all of you, our gratitude. To all of you, our salutation. Thank you.
Our next poet is Rima Tabankura. She's 39 years old and a mother of 2 boys. Rima is a domestic helper here in Singapore for almost 10 years with only one employer. She started writing when she joined a former Daily Life in COVID-19 Facebook group, and now Arts in Me, and was founded by the Migrants Writers of Singapore. At first, she only read all the posted poems. Then one day, she started scribbling words. Loves to write, she said, and that's where she developed it to help her ease her boredom and homesickness. Through writing, she expresses her feelings, and in one of her poems titled The Beauty Within was featured in the Substation Alien Nation project last November 2020. And she's also a volunteer as a team leader in a non-profit organization which is called Uplifters that provide online education courses about money management and personal growth for migrant domestic workers around the globe.
Hello everyone, this is Rima Tabankura, currently working here in Singapore as a domestic helper. I am not able to join personally, so here is my tribute. Thank you Poetry Festival Singapore for this opportunity. Now I will read my poem. The title is Salute to All Healthcare Workers. When the world is caged and fighting the unseen, you dedicated yourself to treat people and keep us safe and sane. You fight selflessly. You help us through uncertainty. You are our safe harbor in the midst of this hurricane that is sweeping the world. No matter how dangerous it is, you are giving all your best to fight and find cure, saving lives, treating the sick in the most noble act. Your bravery is immense. I cannot describe in words how heroic you have been doing all this time. Even if it means putting your life at risk to help save others, you always provide compassionate, life-sustaining care. Your tireless efforts to deliver care and safeguard vulnerable people is well commendable. You deserve to be recognized. Your hard work should be sang out loud. In the midst of weariness, stress, and difficulty, you face its uncertain day with courageous fortitude, without one solitary regret. You ended innumerable days with the exhausting weight of sorrow and cried alone. Hence, you persevere until this day. You spent not only hours, but days away from your families to administer to the stricken and defenseless. Day and night, you're performing miracles in every possible way, rejoicing every win, saddened with every loss. You had become the surrogate camaraderie to the family their patient couldn't see. Your presence is a gift. Your hands bring healing and relief. Always ready to offer care and compassion, always ready to offer help and knowledge to all. No matter what we are going through, you are there for us to lean on. We all have come this far by lending us strength, by lifting up our spirits, by inspiring and letting us know that everything will be all right. To you, dearest healthcare friends, our deepest gratitude, utmost respect, and salute to all of you. Thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Our next poet is Yong Wai Kid. He's an educator and a writer who has edited 4 poetry anthologies. His writings have been featured in the Straits Times, Today, QLRS, Poetry.sg, and elsewhere. He holds a master's degree in English literature from the University College in London. In 2019, he was a recipient of the Outstanding Youth in Education Award presented by the Ministry of Education, Singapore.
Hi everyone, I'm Yong Wai Kid and I'm an educator and editor of a couple of poetry anthologies. So thank you Shilpa and Poetry Festival Singapore for inviting me. I'd like to read my poem, which is in the form of twin cinema. So the poem can be read 3 ways, namely vertically down each left and right column and horizontally across both columns. So the title of this poem is Diatribe Diamantine. And just to explain briefly, diatribe is a verbal attack, while diamantine means like a diamond. So this poem shows 2 different attitudes side by side. One is about tiredness and bitterness, while the other is about strength and courage. So with this poem, which speaks from the perspective of a patient, I'd like to pay tribute not just to the resilience of all who have a diabetic condition, but also all caregivers and of course, our healthcare professionals. So with this poem, I'd like to allude to the ways in which poetry can strengthen and uphold the human spirit by promoting dignity and fortitude. So I'll be reading the poem in the 3 ways in which it can be read. And here's Diatribe Diamantine. Because of my immune system, weak as it is, labored with pain, compromised, I suffer the blight of your gaze. Every day I test my glucose levels. My blood sugars fluctuate, but like mood swings, there is much I cannot control. Ultimately, what is this life of pumps and needles as I inject myself? I am overwhelmed after every dose. The fact that I am more than this frail body tells me I have no cause for fear, even with my poor health giving way. From the occasional ailment, find me unfazed. My patience, greater than whatever diagnostic tests I face. I have the will to endure. I know that the mind pricks the flesh, but I am stronger than this. What matters but a precious field of practice? Of others' passing judgments, I take no notice. With the grace of gratitude, I accept these infusions of hope. Because of the fact that I am more than my immune system, this frail body, weak as it is, tells me I have no cause for fear. Labored with pain, even with my poor health compromised, giving way, I suffer from the occasional ailment, the blight of your gaze. Find me unfazed. Every day I test my patience, greater than my glucose levels. Whatever diagnostic tests I face, my blood sugars fluctuate, but I have the will to endure. Like mood swings, I know that the mind pricks the flesh. There is much I cannot control, but I am stronger than this. Ultimately, what matters? What is this life but a precious field of practice, of pumps and needles of others' passing judgments as I inject myself? I take no notice. I am overwhelmed with the grace of gratitude. After every dose, I accept these infusions of hope. Right, so that was diatribe diamantine. Thank you. And once again, I'd like to express my gratitude and appreciation to all our dedicated healthcare professionals and workers, especially during these difficult times. So all our doctors and nurses, pharmacists and therapists and all medical staff have graciously contributed their services tirelessly and courageously. And as an educator, I'm proud that future generations can be inspired to follow your good example. So wherever you're watching this, please do keep well and take care. And thank you so much.
Our next poet is Janelyn Dupingay Vergara, and she is from Diadi Nueva Vizcaya, Philippines. She came to Singapore to work as a domestic helper in 2015 and has stayed with the same employer since. Her mission is to promote empowerment among women, and she finds writing poems and essays a helpful tool in sending motivation to her fellow migrants. She is a member of Uplifters, a non-profit organization that provides online education for domestic workers on money management and personal growth, and she's also a volunteer with the Migrant Writers of Singapore. In 2020, Janelyn was one of the featured speakers of the Singapore Writers Festivals, reading A Labor of Love. 1. Spotlight in Tagalog. Her poem, Forgive Me, was included in the ebook Translating Migration Multilingual Poems of Movement in 2020, while Beauty in the Wilderness was published in issue 5 in 2021 of the Tiger Moth Review. She also contributed a story to Call and Response to, a Singapore migrant anthology in 2021.
Hello, my name is Janelyn and I am a foreign domestic worker working here in Singapore for more than 6 years now. And my poem was inspired from the clap that we have given on the first wave of pandemic to our healthcare workers. So it is originally written in Tagalog and this is how it goes. Isang palakpak. Isang bagsak ng matunog na palakpak bilang pagsaludo sa mga manggagawang nasa labi pa rin ang ngiti, gaano man kalupit ang kasalukuyang panahon. Hindi alintana ang bakas ng maskara na sa araw-araw ay naging panangga sa kanilang pakikibaka sa isang kaaway na hindi patas kung lumaban. Malagsik kong kumilos at sa isang iglap, buong mundo ay nayanig sa walang habas na pagdaluhong at pagkitil ng buhay, mayaman man o mahirap. Isang bagsak ng matunog na palakpak bilang pasasalamat sa walang kapagurang pagsasakripisyo upang pangalagaan ang kalusugan ng mga mamamayan. Naroon man ang pag-aalinlangan, ngunit nangingibabaw ang tawag ng tungkulin at pagmamahal sa kapwa. Isang bagsak ng matunog na palakpak upang sa nahahapong diway magbigay lakas, iparamdam ang pakikiisa sa layuning mapuksa ang pandemya at sa isang umagay babangong malaya upang samiwin ang halimuyak na dala ng hanging amihan. Madilim man ang langit, sa kasalukuyan, umasa ka na sa pagbagsak ng bawat butil ng ulan, dala nito ay sariwang pag-asa na didilig sa nalalantang pananalig. Isang bagsak ng matunog na palakpak, buong pusong iparinig, iparating ang mensahe ng pagpupugay upang sa pag-andap ng liwanag nilang hawak ay kanilang masumpungan ang pisi na makakapitan at maramdamang sa kanilang pagpuksa sa hindi makitang kalaban, may libu-libong mga kamay ang nakahandang umagapay sa kanilang pakikibaka. So this is the English translation. One clap. As much of resounding applause as a salute to the workers whose smiles are still on their lips, no matter how cruel the present situation. Regardless of the trace of the mask, that on a daily basis has been a shield in their struggle with an enemy that doesn't fight fairly. Agile to act, and in an instant, the whole world trembled relentlessly, assaulted and murdered, whether rich or poor. A smash of resounding applause as a thanksgiving for the tireless sacrifices to protect the health of the citizens. The skepticism is there, but the call of duty prevails and their love of neighbor. A smash of resounding applause that on the exhausted consciousness will give strength, indicate solidarity in order to eradicate the pandemic. And one morning we will rise to inhale the fragrance carried off by the northeast wind. The sky is dark at the moment. Expect that as the raindrops fall, it brings renewed hope to be sprinkled with withering faith. A smash of resounding applause, let it be heard with all your heart. Deliver the message of salute that even when the light flickers, they will find the rope that they can cling on and feel that as they combat the invisible enemy, there are thousands upon thousands of hands ready to accompany them on their fight. Thank you so much, everyone.
Our next poet is Robert Yeo. He's best known as a poet and a playwright. His collected poems are found in the Best of Robert Yeo 2012. A book celebrating his writings called Robert Yeo at 80 was published in December 2020, edited by Ismail Talib. In March, the Second Breakfast Company staged a compressed version of his controversial plays, the Singapore Trilogy. One of his poems was the subject of an installation piece in Hallis Bridge done by James and Petrina Tan from March to June 2021. Brian Richmond interviewed him in Vintage Radio in June 2021.
Thank you, Poetry Festival, for inviting me to this event. It's great to be able to get out, to take part in a public event, and to honor frontline workers in the fight against this terrible pandemic. My poem is in two parts. It's called Frontline Health Workers. The first part is a kind of a free verse imitation of the great American beat poet Allen Ginsberg, whom I had the pleasure of listening to in London. The second part is in rhyme verse, closer to my style of writing poetry. Here goes. Frontline health workers. The newspapers declare you are frontline health workers. I've not been to a real war, and I don't know what a frontline looks like. But the photos in the Straits Times look real. Are there trenches like I see in World War I pictures or read about in war poems? What passing bells for those who die as cattle? It seems all my experience is but bookish. But wait, the war image is real. There is an unseen war, and I have visited the front. The war is a pandemic, and one front is the Tan Tock Seng Hospital. In the last 2 years, I've been there 6 times, not as a COVID patient, but as a patient nonetheless. And the soldiers are the doctors, nurses, administrators, therapies, cleaners, all all who make the front line work because it is duty, and for duty some get infected. A hospital cluster. There is another front line. Less dangerous than hospitals, where doctors are not present, and they are vaccination centers where I got my 2 Pfizer jabs. There is another front line, and it is Changi Airport, the first line of foreign contact. In a sense, there are many fronts, and some of them are not even known. We know where the virus came from, but where exactly is in doubt. We thought vaccination will solve our problems, but many will not be jabbed. Some can't reach it. We thought there is enough for all countries, but that is still in doubt, and there are variants. Of that, there is no doubt. This is another war. We humans fight among ourselves. That must make the mutants happy. They are not humans. They are Hydra-headed. Their variant heads can fly off and form clusters. The second part is in rhyme verse and is a tribute to the fact that our leaders do not politicize vaccination. We must not take for granted what good people do here. Look around the world and see how stunted some leaders are who will not hear. They fear losing their voters, lapdogs to the ideology whose hands are stuffed with banners who shout what they will not see. Are we lucky because we are small? Size not the thing, Singapore. Safety is. Staying alive is not political. We think, therefore we are. No less, no more. Thank you.
Our next poet is Norlila Abdul Ghani. She is a Malay language teacher. She enjoys writing. Her creative works include poetry, modern and traditional, plays, and short stories.
Salam sejahtera. Nama saya Norlila. Hari ini saya akan menyampaikan sebuah sajak yang bertajuk Kau Yang Lelah. Sajak ini ditulis untuk menghargai jasa petugas kesihatan yang pasti lelah dengan tugas mereka yang bertambah dan menekan disebabkan COVID-19. Kau lelah. Berperang dalam diam dengan musuh halus tak terzahir mata. Tanpa senjata, virus itu menawan kita, merenggut jutaan nyawa, dunia berduka. Kau lelah. Risiko dirimu terdedah saat merawat jiwa yang parah. Selain Tuhan, padamu kami berserah. Di bahumu kami melabuh sejuta harapan, tapi maaf. Kadang kami terlupa. Kau juga manusia biasa, takut dan bimbang, membelenggu. Kau lelah merawat pesakit. Sanubarimu bergetaran. Diam-diam, kau alunkan doa. Tuhan, tolong sembuhkan dia. Tuhan, jangan ada yang pergi hari ini. Tuhan, moga tiada yang dijangkiti. Tuhan, tolong lindungi diri aku. Demi menggalas amanah, kau terus gagah melangkah. Terima kasih wahai insan di barisan hadapan kau bertahan. Semangatmu menyuburkan bunga harapan. Norma baharu menjadi landasan kebiasaan. Moga virus COVID-19 tidak terus berlegaran. Pertiwi ini akan bergemerlapan milik kita jua kemenangan. Thank you.
Our next poet is Shilpa Dikshit Taplial. She's a bilingual poet author from Singapore. She's a Pushcart Prize nominee and author of the poetry collection Between Sips of Masala Chai, Kitab 2019. Her poems have been featured in anthologies and journals in Singapore, India, USA, including QLRS, Shut Glass Journal of Zoos, Atelier of Healing, Yearbook of English Indian Poetry in 2021, To Let the Light In, Anima Methody, Asingbol, and so many more. Some of her poems written in Hindi have been translated into Spanish. She has been reading and has read poetry in Malaysia and Kala Goda Arts Festival, Mumbai, and is to be featured in an arts and literary festival in USA in September 2021.
Thank you, Pam, for the kind introduction. Thank you, Poetry Festival Singapore and La Salle College for the venue. My poem, which is a tribute to the healthcare workers of Singapore, is a twin cinema, which means that it can be read in three ways. You have the left column, which is read from top to down, then the right column read top to down, and then the third way is the collective, which is read from left to right. So I will read the first part, which is from the point of view of a patient, and the title is My Days. Glass doors close on me, life dribbling out, searing lungs, limbs going numb. I am watching the dawning of latex hands, nurses and doctors. Meter by meter, fears close in. I follow a chart with tests that will take me to healing, to keep breathing. The virus is unwavering in morning skies. Grass outside is lush in oxygen. Sunbirds and angsanas are a cradle of affirmations. There is no shade from a single leaf. There is no meadow from a blade of grass. I am rerouting from cluttered desks and to-do list my quest for ikigai. One day these lungs will breathe down a leafy road all day long, new roads to my home. The next right side is from the perspective of the healthcare worker, titled In Hospital. And this is where it starts. Alarms ringing, sudden turning of tides, stations of snug N95s and PPEs sturdy against waves of clusters. Days slide into nights. The exchange of tears with isolation, treatments, a reminder to keep breathing. Grip of the outbreak is intense, clear. There is no recess, no leisure between cannulas and pulse readings. Sweat on my brows, anchored to threads, hopeful, tenacious, to battle this together. Our strength is in the collective. We must each do our part, etching a new normal on masks and gloves, cancelled rides, shut estates, Lysol sprays. My quest for family and bedtime stories, past striations of death and life, out of wards and swabs, the bird song, new roads to my home. And the third one is a collective perspective, titled My Days in Hospital. Glass doors close on me, and this is where it starts. Life dribbling out, alarms ringing, searing lungs, limbs going numb, a sudden turning of tides. I'm watching the dawning stations of latex hands of snug N95s, PPEs. Nurses and doctors, sturdy against waves of clusters. Meter by meter, fears close in. Days slide into nights. I follow a chart, the exchange of tears with tests, with isolation, that will take me to treatments, healing, a reminder to keep breathing, to keep breathing. The grip of the virus outbreak is intense, is unclear, wavering. There is no recess, no leisure in morning skies. Between cannulas and pulse, grass outside is lush in oxygen readings. Sweat on my brows, sunbirds and angsanas anchored to threads are a cradle of hopeful, tenacious affirmations to battle this together. There is no shade from a single leaf. Our strength is in the collective. There is no meadow with a blade of grass. We must each do our part. I am re-etching a new normal on masks and gloves, routing from cluttered desks and to-do list, cancel rides, shut estates, Lysol sprays. My quest for ikigai, my quest for family and bedtime stories. One day these lungs will breathe past striations of death and life, down a leafy road, out of wards and swabs, all day long the bird's song. New roads to my home, new roads to my home. Thank you so much.
We will now feature our next poet, Nicholas Quek. Nicholas works in a hospital by day and by night. His work has appeared in Unoya, Review, Metaphors, Contour, Moving Words, and Anima Methody. When he is sleepless, these words remember moments between breaths on his behalf. Every morning, he relearns how to comfort always.
Hi everyone, Nicholas here, and thank you to Poetry Festival Singapore for having me. So I have 3 short poems today. So the first is titled The Amnesia of Being, because sometimes the days melt into one another and they become like small moment after small moments. The amnesia of being, or alone time, part 1. A bowl of half-eaten curry rice, or cancelled meetup, hours away. They are still struggling. Or sipping coffee, the taste of water. In every moment rescheduled, you are a road with no horizon in sight. The second poem is titled Premonitions. So in April, there was the Singapore Poetry Writing Month, and one of the prompts involved a predictive text poem. So after feeding it through my phone, whatever came out became a bit like work lingo. But the heart of this poem is something that a friend texted to me during one of the very, very long days. Essentially, it's, we are not good people because we can do better. And it is all right. Your changes will be resolved and you can go and sleep. So it's something like reassuring advice. Premonitions. And you are not a good person. It is all right. Try to have your life in the same place. You will not be able to make it happen again. For the rest of this day, you will be able to make your changes first, before you leave for the next week or so. If you need help with other things, they will be resolved and you can go ahead with the plan for you to come over and get your stuff together. And then you can sleep. Last poem is titled Unknown Variables, because there are still so many things that we do not know. Unknown variables. Every question left unanswered is a lesson worth repeating. To stumble is sometimes to handhold through the unknown. To bear bad news and sift through every stage of grief. It is necessary to admit mistakes, to allow for weights to drop, and for whatever that is hurt to know itself, to embrace them, to let go, to give. The fruit of service is wisdom, heart one. To remember those at the heart of all that one does. may it all be done with love. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you so much for staying online with us. And this is You Are Watching Online, Tribute to Healthcare Workers in Verse, hosted by the Poetry Festival, Singapore 2021. Thank you, LaSalle College of Arts. Thank you to the National Arts Council. And thank you to all of you, our Singapore poets, our migrant workers, and healthcare professionals. We still have one more poet, and we have not forgotten him. This one is Joshua Ip. He's a Singaporean poet, editor, and a literary organizer. He has published 4 poetry collections, edited 10 anthologies, and co-founded Singapore Literature Station and Overactive Literary Charity. His latest collection of anachronistic translations of Tang poetry, translations to the Tanglish, is forthcoming with Math Paper Press in 2021. And it is by Joshua Ip.
Hello, my name is Joshua Ip. My poem is a contemporary update of a Tang Dynasty poem by Tu Fu, describing sending off a friend on a long journey through war-torn China. I've used the image of war as a contemporary metaphor for the struggle against COVID-19, where empty cities and barren fields map onto today's circuit breaker or quarantine, where the warriors in armor of ancient China are instead our healthcare warriors wearing masks and scrubs. This is my tribute to them. I'll read the original in Chinese first. 宋远，唐朝杜甫。带甲满天地，胡为君远行。亲朋尽衣枯，暗马去孤城。草木岁月晚，关河霜雪清。别离已昨日，应见故人情。Your message is taking longer than usual to send. In the land of masks and scrubs, how dare one leave the house? As my phone buzzes with worry, I drive alone through lockdown city. The vegetable markets lie desolate. The streets are swept snow clean. Yesterday, the circuit breaker, and this morning, I think of Tu Fu's poem. This anachronistic translation and many more like it are available in my latest poetry collection, Translations from the Tanglish, available in August from Books Actually. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and all those who are watching us online and those who will be watching us for the replays, thank you so much for joining us here in a very special program, which is a collaboration of our Singapore poets, our migrant workers, and the healthcare professionals. Tribute to healthcare workers in verse. And once again, it is my pleasure, Pamela Wildheart, to be moderator and host of this very unique project, which touches the heartstrings of many people. A big tribute to our healthcare workers once again. And thank you, poets. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, partners, for joining us this very special show. See you soon.